Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. This is the show where I celebrate artists and their body of worth. Now, before we get to tonight's show, I do want to remind everyone that today is number 201. It's been 201 days since our theaters have been open, since our cabarets have been open, since concerts around the country were happening. But thank God we've got our memories. And tonight we're going to be celebrating some wonderful memories. Tonight is the birthday of Madeline Kahn. She was born 78 years ago tonight, and she left us all too soon. But if you're like me and a baby boomer, we grew up with these iconic images throughout the 1970s. Who could forget her performance as Eunice Burns in What's Up, Doc? Truly one of the funniest films ever made. And then, of course, there's Young Frankenstein. And then there's Blazing Saddles, Paper Moon. And I have to admit, one of my favorite performances of Madeline Kahn is her on the Carol Burnett Show. Catwoman on Mars, one of the funniest things that ever happened. Now, anyone who knows me knows that I am a Hello Dolly fanatic. I have been studying Hello Dolly for well over 10 years. I was lucky enough to call Carol Channing friend. And Carol one day said to me, she's, Richard, you know more about Dolly than anybody. You should write a book about it. So I started chronicling all of the great women and a few good men too. Leroy Reams, who have played Dolly Levi. And through this time, I've had the good fortune to interview so many incredible people and to celebrate so many wonderful women and men who played Dolly. And in 1992, when she was 50, Madeline Kahn embarked on a very short tour of Hello, You Know Who. And tonight we're going to celebrate with wonderful memories of what that production was like, what she was like to work with as an actress. And I'm very excited to bring our first guest on, Margery Lowe. Margery Lowe, of course, was part of that production. Hello, Margery.
Hi, Richard. How are you?
It's so good to see you.
Well, there's nothing going on tonight, right? There's nothing on TV, so we need something to do.
This is the calm before the storm.
Exactly.
Yes. Now, I want to ask you before we get to Dolly, how are you doing in the middle of everything that's going on right now?
I'm like everybody else. It's good days, bad days, good hours, bad hours. We don't even know what day it is. And we're all in this holding pattern and doing a lot of this camera. I just put a post on Facebook joking because we're setting up backdrops and lights. And, I should have paid more attention in tech class in school.
It's true that I think all of us should have done that, but we're learning as we're going along. And I love the fact that so many people, especially in our profession, are stepping outside of the comfort zone and doing whatever we need to do to entertain everyone who is sitting at home tonight, who wants to think of something else other than something else, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. No, I mean, the theaters are getting so creative, and I'm doing Zooms and workshops, and people are doing concert work on Zoom. And so, you can't kill us. You can't keep us down. We will find a way to perform.
Now, we want to go back to 1992. Where were you in the trajectory of your career when you were cast to do Hello, Dolly?
In 1992, well, I was about 6 years old. Right?
Yes.
I was saying before, the boy, if you didn't feel old before, now tonight, you're like, wow, how has it been that long? But I was living in New York and performing, and I had actually, right before this audition, I was thinking about this today, I had just gotten back from doing a production of Hello, Dolly at Maine State Music Theatre for Dennis Grimaldi.
Oh,
You
I love
directed.
that.
Yeah.
Who was your Dolly for that production?
It was not Marianne,
Mary
Mary
Ellen
Ashley.
Ashley.
Mary Ellen Ashley.
That's right.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. And she was wonderful. And
Oh.
it was a fantastic production. I played Minnie Fay in that one. And then my agent, Barry Katz, saw this call from Sherry, who we will see later, and went in for this. And I, of course, when I heard it was Madeleine, you know, she was iconic. She was.
Well, let's go back to that moment. What were your thoughts? I mean, if like myself, I'm sure you had seen her in film and everything, and you know you were very familiar with her work. But what were your thoughts about Madeline Kahn prior to getting cast in the show? And did those feelings stick around?
You know, I didn't have any impressions of her in real life. I just knew her like everyone else from those incredible roles. In fact, I think the first one I saw her that really made that impression was not Paper Moon, was What's Up, Doc?
What's Up, Doc?
With Barbara Streisand, yeah. And she's just brilliant. You know, she's one of those actors that like the Elaine Stritches, or they just have to give a look and you start laughing. She's so funny.
Do you remember the first time that you met her and what that day was like in the rehearsal studio when she came in?
I do. You know, she was lovely. In fact, no, she wasn't there for the callbacks, I don't believe. But I think it was the first day of rehearsal. And she was lovely and very down to earth. And I have a few favorite memories, but one of my special memories is about that third rehearsal in. You know, she was just we were waiting around, and of course, I was playing Ermengarde, and we have those scenes together early on. And she said, you know, we could be sisters. We look alike. And that was the greatest thing I could ever hear. I think it was the red hair, you know. But that's what she was like, very down to earth and so professional. And that the impression Madeleine made in rehearsal and how she worked her way into this role that was so familiar to so many people, but she still made it her own, really has stuck with me my whole career.
That's amazing. Now, Carol Channing used to refer to Gower Champion as her benevolent despot. She says you need that person who's in charge. And let's face it, Hello, Dolly is a big production. And you had one of the best directors in the business. What are your memories of the director? What was his name?
Leroy
Reams. Hello, Leroy.
Hello.
So Leroy,
I do remember. I don't know if you remember this, Leroy. I remember my original audition. You know, I did the material for you, but you just wanted to chat, and that may be the way you audition, but it was so comfortable, and you just wanted to get to know the individuals. And I remember it very well. You just wanted to hear you told some stories, just regular conversation. And
it's important to find out if an actor can listen, because that's very important. And I find that out when I talk with them, if they really do listen, because that's how you get your best work. At least I think so. Absolutely.
I guess I was listening that day.
Now, Leroy, you have a rich history with Hello, Dolly leading up to Madeline Kahn. And of course, I know the story about how you ended up in your first production of Dolly. Could you share that story with us and then talk about the road that led to this particular production of Dolly?
Yeah. Well, I worked with Carol Channing doing Lorelei. We did a year's tour. We came back to the Palace Theatre, and we ran there. And then a couple years later, I got a call from Carol, and we can do her too. Hello, Leroy.
I'm giving that to you tonight.
I didn't know, you know. And I'm going to do a revival, darling, of Hello, Dolly, and I want you to play Cornelius Hackle. But Lucia Victor, the director, and Jerry Herman don't know you, darling, but you'll have to audition. But don't worry, you got the part. And indeed, that did happen, and that began my lifelong association with Jerry Herman. And it was wonderful because we were taught the Gower Champion version of the show, because Lucia was his production stage manager and a very efficient one. And she gave us all the things that Gower wanted. And that was very important to me. But yet we brought our own personality into the character. But it was that original production. That's the one I know. And that's the one that I also give to people. We all add our little squeaks to it and tweets and things like that. But it's basically that Gower Champion version, which from my experience has been the best version. And I've seen a lot of them. But I think his is the best because the romance of the Thornton Wilder novel is in Gower's show. Many times that's lost. The romance and also the importance of the minor characters, because somehow they get all concerned with Dolly and they don't realize that there's a lot of support under there. Like Cornelius' Hackle wanting to seek adventure and seeing Dolly matchmake all these people and manipulate them. And that's what the charm of the show is. And many times, unfortunately, that's missing.
Now, a mutual friend of ours who also played Dolly, she was the Australian Dolly, was Carol Cook.
Yes.
And Carol Cook once said to me, she says, honey, an orangutan could play the part because it is foolproof. And if that actor or actress, I'm going to say actor now, because I saw Leroy play Dolly Levi. Brilliant.
So did I.
Down in Florida. And but she said that any actress coming down those stairs who doesn't get instant applause as she's making her entrance into the Harmonia Gardens, if she doesn't get that applause, it's time to check her hat at the door and get out of the business.
Yes.
Obviously, you've done so many productions of this. What is it about that moment in the show that is so pivotal? And I know that you've got stories that you're going to share with us about what it was like directing Madeline Kahn and her finding the Dolly within her.
Yes. Well, the staircase is really her re-entrance into the human race, which she talks about. And this is really her grand entrance. And what a great way to come down the staircase with everyone turning up stage watching you do it through that fabulous song. And can you believe that how Prince and Jerry Robbins and all those people in the beginning were approached about it, and David Merrick also, cut the song, it's terrible, get rid of it. And it's one of the most iconic moments in the American musical theater. And as far as I'm concerned, the best staged musical number, period.
I agree.
Because it's character, it's got the dancing, it's got the drama, it's got the flash, it has everything. It's just the best. And the way that it's staged, no one's ever going to do it better. People do try, but I'm telling you, it's never better than the original Gower Champion choreography. It's iconic, and I don't care where you put those jumps, they're best at the end of the number, and it stops the show. So why do you mess with it? You know, they say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And for that number, that's exactly true.
Before we get into the details of the directing, I want to bring wonderful casting director Sherry Seff on. Hello, Sherry. It's good to see you.
Hi. Thank you for inviting me.
I am thrilled that you're here tonight because a lot of people, myself included, you know, as long as I've been in the business, don't really know a lot about the behind the scenes of how a production comes together in terms of the casting. So how did the Madeline Kahn production of Dolly come to be?
Well, it started with the producer, which is his name is Chris Manos, Theater of the Stars in Atlanta, and it started with him. I mean, Chris was, you know, Chris is part of the old guard, and he's probably literally one of the last surviving, although he certainly isn't, you know, working in the theater. Nobody's working in the theater right now, but so he would plan his season, and then we would go on these, you know, call this let's put together a list of people who would be, you know, a good Dolly or, you know, whatever the particular show was. And because he had been around for as long as he had been around, he knew a lot of people. He knew a lot of the agents. And so it was just really a matter of, you know, picking up the phone and calling and saying, who do you have who's looking for something during the summer? And so he had already made the deal with Madeleine by the time he let me know that he had made a deal for her to do the show. One of the situations was the fact that it wasn't really going to be that long. She had already signed to do Sisters Rosenzweig. So she had a very narrow window of time that she could, do this. And I think for most leading ladies or leading character ladies, playing Dolly is something that's on their bucket list. And so
now I will say this, I don't think it was on Madeleine's bucket list. As a matter of fact, in my research, she had not even seen a production of Dolly prior to this. Now, Leroy, she had a few trepidations in terms of jumping into the character. Am I correct?
Yes. It's interesting, the fact that, we had many conversations and we became extremely close and personal during the rehearsal period and remained so until she passed. And I asked her one day, I said, why are you doing the show, Madeleine? She said, I need the money because I have to support my mother.
Wow.
And it was just, I thought, wow. But she was so candid. And the thing about Madeleine is that everyone expected her to be a comic, and she wasn't. She was a real, very serious actress. It's just that she knew how to be funny, and but people expected her to be like a comic when they would meet her, like she would go, and do. But she wasn't that at all, and it's surprising that people expected that from her. She was quite serious, and I can go on and on and on and on. We've got other people there, but if we can get into it, I can give you a whole, thing about the seriousness of how she approached the role, because she knows how to be funny, and she is funny, has a great sense of humor, but that's not her outward, her inward personality.
That was my memory too, it made such an impression how she found the comedy because she found the reality in the moment. And then that it was just the circumstances were so funny, but she wasn't a mugger. She wasn't presentational.
I'll start from the beginning. You have to indulge to go when you just jump in, people, because I will tell the whole story. When I first met her, it was at Jerry Herman's townhouse on the east side. We went up to his top room, which had a swinging trapeze in the middle of it. And let's get rid of that fallacy right now. Jerry didn't put it there. When he bought the house, it was there. But people have all these stories which are not true about why Jerry had that trapeze. They're not true. It was there, and Jerry kept it because he thought it was funny and controversial. But that's where we was. And when Madeleine came into the meeting, of course, that's the first thing she saw. She was that trapeze. And the look on her face was just priceless. And then, of course, Jerry explained everything, and we started talking about the character. And the big piece of it, first of all, I loved her immediately. She looked terrific. She had that wonderful red, thick hair that everybody would love to have, and you look like you have it tonight, Margery. But
Jerry, you both have your gorgeous red hair.
Yeah, I said, Madeleine, the best thing I'm going to tell you right now, before we start rehearsal, you have to be off book. So you have to memorize this character because we have 10 days. It's enormous, and I want to give you everything, but I can't do it if you're fighting lines. So you have to be off book in order for us to get through the process. And she was. When she came to rehearsal, John Schuck was Horace Van de Gelder. And I always start with that first scene in the the eating scene in Harmonia Gardens, because that's the most involved. And that way, when you get busy with the rest of the show, they can always go off and rehearse on their own. So I start off with that, and we're going through our first day of rehearsal. And then it gets to the point, Horace Van de Gelder, you go your way, and I'll go mine. And I showed it to her, and she said, I don't do bits. And I said, well, Madeleine, it's not so much a bit as it is, it's put on for the reality of the line. It'll get the laugh, and it's big enough for the audience, too. I said, but I can give you a reason why you're doing it. If it helps you, a lady doesn't eat in her gloves. So when she goes, you go your way, and I'll go mine, she takes off her gloves. And that's when the audience is laughing. Trust me. So she thought about it. She said, okay. Then we get into the scene, and the line is repeated again. And she said, all right, what's my motivation now? I said, well, you now have the gloves off, but you're serving the food. You've got a fork and a spoon. So you go your way, and I'll go mine. You click them together, and you put them down. on the side. She said, well, that was cheap. And I said, yeah, and you got your fucking motivation. She laughed. She laughed, and that was the end of it. From that point on, it was all there. And it's not so much that you try not to let them find it themselves. You do. But there are some things that are just built in, and that's the laugh. And then the opposite of that later when in the direction, when we did the hat shop scene, it's when Cornelius is in the closet, and at the end of the number she says, so you see, Mr. Vandergelder, there couldn't possibly be a man in that closet. And he sneezes, and Carol would face front and go, God bless you, which always got a laugh. And Madeleine said, I don't quite. Yeah, I said, well, then do what you want to do. Follow your instinct, Madeleine. It's very important. Follow your gut instinct. She said, this is what I'd like to do. You see, Mr. Vandergelder, there couldn't possibly be a man in that closet. He sneezes. And she looked at Vandergelder and she said, God bless you. And he went, oh. And it worked just as well and still got the laugh. And I said, fine, Madeleine. The laugh is what we're going after. That's your way. I accept it. Let's do it. And then in the first scene, she didn't like saying varicose veins reduced. And we had a 5-minute conversation about it. She said, well, you know what they are. I said, of course I know what they are. She said, well, they're terrible. You can't laugh at something. I said, it's not so much what they are, Madeleine. It's the sound of the word. Varicose veins reduced as an alliteration, and it's a funny sounding name. Now, if you could come up with something as funny, Mike Stewart's dead, we won't tell him. And so she thought about it. She called her mother. She called her therapist. She came in one day. She had a list, facial warts, da-da-da. I said, Madeleine, that's even worse. And I said, I'll tell you what's a funny word, Madeleine. Brassiere. Brassiere is a funny word. If you look at Ernestina, who's not Ernestina, but she's the actress who's heavy, who's playing us, if you look at her and you say, and Brassiere's reinforced. And I said, let's try it at rehearsal. And if it gets a laugh, I get it. She said, it's a deal. Of course, she said it. She got a big laugh at rehearsal because the people had heard the other line, and it stayed in the show. But you give the actors the confidence to let them discover. Mm-hmm. And that's the way to gain their confidence and get them to know what they do. Now, the result of all of that, she was terrific. And she got everything down, and we go down and we have a dress rehearsal the night before the opening. That's the first time she's been in the costumes. She's only heard the music with the piano. That's all we had. Mm-hmm. The opening day that afternoon was the orchestra rehearsal. Mm-hmm. It's the only time she was going to hear the orchestra before opening night. Now,
welcome to summer stock.
I know that it's just hard, but she did it, and she was just got into it. But the guy playing your counterpart, Margery, Ambrose.
Tom, who played,
he was a lovely actor, but opening night, he made his entrance and froze. He came on and went.
I blocked it out.
He went. And Madeleine went, don't say another word, Mr. Kemper. I know exactly what you're going to say. You want to know why? Well, let me tell you why. It said that. And then he got back in, but it was so fast, the audience never knew the difference. At intermission, which I would never do, I ran backstage, I grabbed her, I kissed her, and I said, do you know how brilliant you are? I said, because you knew the part, and because she's so concentrated. And that's the way she was in the whole show. It was brilliant. Now, many other insecurities she had. At that dress rehearsal, she didn't like going out on the ramp. It scared her. Mm-hmm. And she said, I can't go out there. And she said, and also I feel so silly. I feel like, there she is, Miss America. I said, Madeline, stop it. I said, you were at the Harmonia Gardens. There's a Mrs. O'Reilly. There's a Mr. Schwartz. There's a Mr. I said, these are all your friends. You've made your re-entrance. You know all the people. That's the audience. They're there. And I grabbed her by the hand, and I walked her, and I said, now walk with me. And I held her hand as we went across, and that was it. And it was moments like that to help her discover. And I mean, we can get into particulars all the way, but what the result of it was, I want to jump now. After everything was done, I'll go back and mention a few things, but when she was doing Sisters Rosenzweig at Lincoln Center, I went to see the show, and perchance Carol Channing was there that night. So we both went backstage. Of course, Madeleine saw me. Now I'm going to brag, but it's true. And she ran and she grabbed me before Carol. And just carried on. And I said, you're so wonderful in the show, Madeleine. You're so wonderful. She said, I am wonderful in this show because I worked with you last summer. She said, because never in my whole career have I ever been confident. I'm always insecure. If I don't get a laugh, I'm learning to go. And every single thing you told me to do in Dolly got a laugh every night. And she said, I never have had that kind of confidence in my entire career. But you gave me that. And when I went into rehearsal for Sisters Rosenkreuz, I didn't like the director. But I didn't let him get in my way, and I didn't make him doubt myself. I just remember I remember what Leroy told me to do. Follow your instinct, Madeleine. Follow your instinct. And she said, and when I put on that Chanel suit, I was Dolly on the ramp.
Wow.
I said, and I'll tell you something, Madeleine. Don't let them put you in the featured category for the Tony, because they'll probably want to put Jane Alexander in the lead. And don't you let them do that. The night of the Tony Awards, of course, she won in the actress category. And the phone rang. 12 o'clock, I picked it up. There's noise in the background. She said, hi, honey, I called my mother first.
That's great.
And so that was, but it was all.
You were talking. Sorry, go ahead, Laura.
The whole thing about her was that she was the consummate professional. She came in prepared, and she did take direction. And once she got the audience and found the confidence, she carried it. Now, one little thing she added when she was in St. Louis, and they wouldn't pay for me to go there, by the way.
This was the Muny. Yes.
Yeah, the Muny. So Madeline called me the next day after the opening, and she was laughing on the phone. She said, of course, they took out the horse cart entrance with the people pulling the thing, and Paul Blake had the Budweiser wagon brought with the Clydesdale horses. That's how I made my entrance. So they brought on the Clydesdale horses, me on the Budweiser beer wagon. And she said, of course, the first thing the horses did when they got on stage was pee. So we walked through the pee the rest of the night. And then she said, and I did something that I hope that you won't be mad at me. I said, well, tell me what you did. She said, in the Dolly number, at the last one, they go, I hear the eyes. So she said, I went, I hear the, oh, sweet mystery of life, I found you. And
I remember it well.
I said, leave it in, Madeline. Jerry would love it. That makes it try. I said, well, it is from the period. I said, of course it would be. You wouldn't do it unless it was.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That became her little signature. But I wish the world could have seen that performance, because she was brilliant. And John Shuck was wonderful too. And she never needed any direction ever on the speeches.
Well, I want to get back to Sherry for just a minute, Sherry, because I want to ask you, had you worked with Madeline prior to this production?
No, it was the first time that I had met her. It was the first time that I worked with her, and I had a dual role in this. I not only was the casting director of the show, but I also company managed for them. So I traveled with them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so my relationship with Madeline, really, I spent a lot of time with her in her hotel room. I wanted her to get comfortable with me. I wanted her to be able to feel that she could come to me, and because we knew that it was really kind of something that she was really not that familiar with. She just wasn't really familiar with some of these theaters and with, sort of the pace, because when Leroy tells you that 10 days to put up a production of Hello, Dolly is really, really, it's an awful lot of work. You got an awful lot of moving pieces. But I want to tell a PS to the story that Leroy talked about with the passerelle, because I think it was probably one of the funniest experiences that everybody in the company had. And I think actually that's when everybody fell in love. The passerelle was put into the supports for it were in the orchestra pit, and the pit moved, hydraulically, it moved up and down. So they had not anchored it, but they had put the passerelle up. And so when the first time that she came around it, it was not secured. So it kind of moved a little bit. It was not dangerous. It wasn't going to fall apart. It was just that it wasn't secured in. And she had people on either side of her because they were doing one of the musical numbers. And she literally went down on her knees and gripped the edge of the passerelle and would not move. She was, and the look on her face. And
this happened, excuse me, Sherry, this happened during a performance?
No. This happened in the technical rehearsal, because everything happened really fast.
The night before opening.
So she's down on the, like literally sitting on the passerelle, but holding on to the edge. And she had dancers on either side of her. Bill Bateman was on one side, and I think Chris Catelli was on the other side of her. And Bateman had to go and literally peel her fingers off of the rim, and then they walked back off stage. But it was just one of those moments that, it was spontaneous. We got to sort of see the real, a real part of her. And I think she just really, to be honest with you, and this is the same thing that, that Leroy said, is the night that Bill Bateman and I went to see her in Sisters Rosenzweig, she clearly said, I could never bring to this role what I brought to this role without having the experience that I just had with Hello, Dolly. Mm-hmm. And, you ask Margery about, what did the company think? Did they have any preconceived notions? And I had heard, I heard what everybody else heard, but I never saw a moment of it. She was a consummate professional. She really, I've worked with a lot of celebrities, and I've been out on the road a lot with people, and especially in the time that with Theater of the Stars. And the tone of a company is set by the star. And the company, it was one of those magical experiences. She and John were so great together. She trusted Leroy. She trusted the choreographer. She trusted.
It was Bill Bateman, by the way.
Yes.
It wasn't Billy Bateman. Billy was the dance captain on the show. It was another guy, Tony somebody.
Oh, Tony Parisi.
Oh, thank you,
Tony Parisi.
Tony Parisi.
Yeah.
Because Bill assisted him.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, but like I said, I traveled with the company, and when we were in St. Louis, she came to me and she said, I want to do something for the company. I said, well, what do you think you might want to do? And she said, I'd love to have a party. And I said, that's a great idea. So I said, tell me, I'll certainly help you. And so she gave me a budget. We put together this party. That's where a lot of the pictures that we have were from that party. And she just was so gracious, and she was so approachable. And this idea that she was, that she was a diva, and that she was, and nobody, I don't think anybody ever saw a moment of that. It was absolute magic. And and people really mourned when the show closed, because we weren't really out that long. We did 3 performance weeks and 10-day rehearsal.
Well, I was going to ask you, I know that you started in Atlanta. How many weeks did you do in each spot?
We did a week in Atlanta, because it's a 4,800 seat house. It's the Fox. And then when we did a week in St. Louis, which is 12,000, and then we did a week in Kansas City, which is a 10,000 seat house.
But we should mention the other actors who were in the production.
Sure.
James Darrah was Cornelius, and Mrs. Malloy was Colleen Fitzpatrick.
Yes.
Right.
Who was Barnaby?
Frank Parr.
Frank Parr, that's right.
Frank Parr.
Yeah, I couldn't think of his last
and
name.
Laurie Ann Mall was.
I love Laurie.
And Tom, who played Ambrose.
Yeah, Tom. I'm forgetting his last name now.
Well,
you were asking about our impression, and I don't know if you guys knew this, but Madeleine got us. She was so warm to the whole company, and especially to Colleen and Laurie and myself. Our ritual at 15, she was a huge B-52s fan, and at our 15th call, she called us into her dressing room, and every night she would play Rock Lobster, and we would rock out and dance to it. And that was her warm up before we went on stage.
And Love Shack.
And Love Shack. And then she got us tickets. So the 3 of us, the 3 girls, we had a reunion for Sisters Rosenzweig. And that was the person I knew. Yeah. I didn't, that she was nurturing. My favorite story was when we went to Kansas City. The cast all went out line dancing, because it's Kansas City. So that's what you do. And she came. And we were in that bar, and she turned to me and she said, "What are a couple of Jews from Long Island doing in Kansas City, drinking whiskey and line dancing?" But she was out with the company.
All I can see right now is her in blazing saddles going, "Come over here, cowboy."
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, she was great about that kind of stuff. She really was. She wanted to be with the company.
Yes.
And Love Shack it turned into, and it would blast. I mean, and it's still to this day, every time I hear Love Shack, she's the person I think of.
Me too. You know? Absolutely.
Well, one night we were out together and we got, very personal and lovey-dovey. And she looked at me and she said, "Sweetheart, before I knew what was what, you were the kind of man I used to fall in love with." And she gave me a big kiss. And we laughed about that for years. And it's one of the best compliments I've ever received. But I'm telling you, we never had a crossword. And it was nothing. It's one of the high points of my career, having those 10 days, because everyone was so nurturing. And Chris gave us what we wanted. And, it was a lovely production. And it's a shame that the Broadway audience with revivals didn't get to see that performance. But she was there on the opening night of Carol Channing's 94 revival at the L'Enfantine, which I directed. And so she came and she saw me at intermission and she grabbed me and she said, "Were we as good as this tonight?" I said, "In many ways better, honey." And we laughed. I'm telling you, it was a labor of love, and all of us will attest to you that it doesn't get better than that.
I'll tell you the other thing about Madeleine that I found in terms of the role. I mean, I was, it was my senior high school production. I played Ernestina Muny. I mean, I was a fan and a fanatic. And then when I did it, we did it again in summer stock when I was an apprentice at Lakewood Musical Playhouse in Pennsylvania. One of the things about Madeleine's performance that I loved and adored was that she brought a sensuality to the role that nobody else had really brought, because she was really sensual. There was a sexiness about her without being overt. It just was, and it really, the chemistry that she had with John was just really, it was really quite wonderful, and they trusted each other on stage, and and she wanted to be a part of that company. I will tell you that, and I have no idea because I haven't pulled it out in years. I have an audio recording of the show that one of the sound men made for me. I mean, it's it's a lot of years, so I don't know whether or not there's any problem with that. But I just wanted to capture it. And I mean, in other times, if we did the show now, people would be recording things on their iPhones and everything like that. But it was a magical production. Leroy, the time that we spent with her, because that was where Chris didn't pinch pennies. He made sure that she was secure, that she saw Leroy, that she spent time with him. Whatever she said she needed, he actually really gave her. And I think that also really kind of made a huge difference.
Well, we were together all the time. We were in rehearsal, then we went out and had dinner together every night. So we spent hours talking and talking. And one of the things when you talked about the sexiness, as I explained to Madeleine, I said, turn of the century, a woman could not vote. She basically was chattel. She was owned by her husband. And the only thing a woman could use to get what she wanted was her femininity and her sexuality. That's how she manipulated the men. And that whole business that goes up into So Long Dearie, when Horace Vandergatto says, "I wouldn't marry you if you're the last woman on earth." She says, "Oh, well, I don't want you," in other words, "but what I've got is so good, but you can't have it. So wave your little hand and whisper, So Long Dearie, you ain't gonna see me anymore, but it's good, but you can't have it." And that's the way that we talked. And that's why all of that came in. I said, that's how she gets her way. And when she does physical things with Vandergatto, although he doesn't want her, he can't help but be, nervous when she gets around him. So a lot of that stuff is all built in with the character. And that's what I did with Carol Channing in the 94 revival. We had long talks about that because I wanted Carol to rediscover the character. And she was not there but she eventually came around. And I think that in many ways, although she was 76 years old then, I mean, let's face it, she actually did more dancing in that version because I restaged Dearie the way that I do it, because that's not the way she was taught it. So we did a lot of changes. And also in dancing, I did the whole thing of the matchmaking at the end, matching up the couples. That was never in the original. So that was all changed. And also the night of Dearie, when Carol did it in the revival, Marge Champion was my date. And Marge looked at me and she said, "You fixed it." And I said, "Fixed it?" She said, "You fixed Dearie." She said, "Gower never had a chance because it was put in too late." And she said, "You fixed it." She said he would be so proud. So, you know, those are the kinds of things. But listen, I'm not trying to say I'm better than Gower Champion. I'm not. But I worked with him. I knew his work. And I just wanted to keep the romance and the sexuality and all of that into it. As an actor, I have a tendency to go more into that. So many director choreographers spend more time staging and doing the physical dancing than they do really getting the characters involved. And I think that's the thing that I can offer too, besides singing and dancing. But I respond more to that as a director with the actors. And in this case with Madeleine, it paid off greatly.
Right. Now, I have a question that I want each of you to weigh in on, and I'm going to start with you, Margery, and we'll go around. But what was that moment when you first realized that Madeleine and Dolly became one and the same? Was there a specific moment for you?
I do remember it. I you know, she was so, I just was so enamored with her process. Particularly because it was, you know, music theater, but she approached it as if it was the matchmaker, and she had to sing on pitch. And I do remember the story that Leroy is telling about when she said, you know, so much of it's breaking the fourth wall, and a lot of Dollies will do it straight out, and there are people that they talk to and refer to. And I remember distinctly her turning to Leroy and saying, "So who am I talking to?" And he was right there. He said, "Okay, it's either Horace or this. You've got to think of your friend in town that you need to give advice." And he justified it all for her. And that made sense to her. She wasn't about the mugging or breaking that fourth wall. It was all justified. And so for me, it was so much of a deeper performance. It was so soulful. And when she did that monologue, you were in tears every night listening to her.
And you didn't have to direct her. And any of the speeches, they were always there. The first time she did them, I just looked at her and I said, "It's perfection." I said, "There's nothing that I can tell you. This is what it should be." And so, you know, you're right. Because you have to tell actors too when they're right. You know, you can't always just tell them when they're wrong. So, you know, you have to say, that's it. And one day in rehearsal, she and John did the timing in the eating scene better than it's ever been done in the history of my being with the show. And
incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
It was, now it never got that way always, but for that time it was, you know, terrific. Well, but they were two very good actors. And that's the way.
And Leroy, was there a specific moment for you where you said, "This is it. She and Dolly are one and the same"?
Oh, no, it was from the beginning. It was just getting her to have confidence in doing it and learning how to perform in one. Because so much of the show, Dolly talks to the audience. And, you know, you have to include them in as part of the show. And that's what Carol Channing did so brilliantly. And that's on whom, you know, it was fitted. So you have to get the other actors to understand that so that they involve the audience that way. She learned how to do that, and she became comfortable with it. And she was comfortable with it the first performance. I couldn't believe her first performance. Having heard the orchestra that afternoon, having had the clothes on the night before, and that afternoon making the changes, and to go out and give that performance on opening night was one of the thrilling moments of the theater.
What got her over that hurdle of the passerelle, you know, not being bolted down and being able to go out there and have that?
I went out and grabbed her by the hand and walked around with her and just let her into it and made her feel comfortable. And once I said, don't think of it as, you know, parading. Think of as greeting the people in the audience. There's Mr. Schwartz. There's Mr. O'Rourke. I mean, you involve that. You're in the home. You know all these people, Madeleine. And that's all it took. But you
Right.
had to work with her as an actor.
Right, but there was also the technical side of it, which, you know, Madeline was really bright, you know, was the idea that it's not going to wobble like this. They are going to secure it. And so after the crew came in and secured it, because what happened is with the hydraulics, you have to make sure it's in the right place. Yeah. You know, before you anchor it down. And so once that was done, she came before like half hour, and she walked around it so she could feel that it was secure, so she didn't have to worry about it, and it was. You know, she just needed to have that level of comfortability. And it was funny because by the time we hit St. Louis and by the time we hit Kansas City, she was a breeze on that thing. She used to run out there. I mean, and she would, you know, because she led a lot of the company onto the Passerelle. And she just became more secure with it. And she was, to be honest with you, you know, there was a thing about Madeleine. She was fearless. She really was. She was fearless. If she trusted you, she would, you know, she would then be free to be able to bring the rest of it, you know, to her. And, you know, I mean, it's interesting because that whole last 48 hours is a very intense period of time when you're doing summer stock. It really is. You got a lot of moving parts. You got a lot of things that are trying to happen at the same time. And, you know, but when it works, you know, it works. And I think that, you know, for me, you know, also seeing her come through that curtain, you know, at the top of the stairs in Harmonia Gardens there, you know, it was breathtaking. She was real. And each guy, when she came down the stairs, she had a relationship with each one of those guys.
Absolutely.
You know, that was really really who she was. She saw herself as a part of that company and not as the, you know, and not as the star. She was, and they loved and adored her. They just really did.
We always used to talk about that being an orgy.
It was kind of like a love fest.
And then make it an orgy.
You know,
it work.
I will tell you, one of the things that people don't really know unless you worked outside, these costumes were made of wool. These costumes were heavy and they were hot. And when we were it was either St. Louis or Kansas City, because it had to be one or the other. It was like 110 degrees.
Wow.
You know, and you could see they were melting, absolutely melting. You could see the steam rising, you know, like by the and she never complained. If anything, because that was part of my role was to keep her safe and be there for her, was to make sure that she had what she needed. But she really, and nobody else complained. They were hot, but she didn't complain and they didn't complain. She was a great role model for them.
She took care of us.
Yeah.
She would take care of the whole company. If there was something that was needed, she wasn't just about herself. She took care of
it was one of the happy times of her life. And she said that was a great time in her life. She had confidence. She loved playing the role. And it's remarkable because she wasn't familiar with the show and had never done it. I mean, it's a very special person to be able to get all of that information and be able to project it to the audience and learn how to work with that audience and do that, which, you know, made her comfortable. And that's why she carried on so about, you know, that it changed, you know, her confidence in Sisters Rosenzweig. That was the result of it. And I loved hearing that story, you know, again, reiterated that she referred to that. She said, I could have never done this without having had that summer.
Wow.
Now, one thing that all three of you have in common is, among many other things, is that you've all done various productions of Dolly. What made her Dolly unique to Madeline that no other Dolly touched upon? Margery?
What I was referring to before, the fact that she hadn't done it before, I think was why she was so brilliant. She wasn't copying anybody's performance. She took in Leroy's tips of what he knew worked, but it was organic. She made it her own. And again, she approached it like it was the matchmaker. I think I even remember her having a copy of it, but she just wanted to know who am I? Why am I doing this? What is my intentions? Acting 101. And the result is it works. When in doubt, as actors, we know, go back to that and you can't go wrong.
Great. Leroy?
Well, I think that of all the dollies that I directed, and by the way, they were all very different from one another. And there are certain basics that you have to do if you want to get the result. But if you work with the actor and they trust their instincts, you can discover new things. And I think that what Madeleine gave, of all the dollies I directed, she was the most real.
Mm-hmm.
That she and you had to give her a reason to do something, and I understood that, and I appreciated it, and I gave it to her, and she took it, and she trusted it, and that was the difference in the performance. Many times when I've had dollies who have done it before, it's been a problem because they come into it wanting to do what they did before without adjusting to what it is now and who the people who are doing it, because every time you do it, it's different. And many times, well, I don't want to get into, making incidences, but it's been to the detriment that you have to do it as if you're starting fresh again. You can't come in wanting to do, well, this is the way I do it, and everybody else said, no, you have to adjust it with everybody else. And that's what makes it acting, and that's what makes it thrilling. So that when you look at the new actor, you really look at their face and listen to them. And if you listen, you're going to have a different response, and so are they. Mm-hmm. And it just makes it much easier and more creative.
She was an incredible scene partner.
Yeah.
She gave.
Yeah, I found that, the other dollies that I had seen were, I felt at times sort of on the edge of cartoon. Mm-hmm. That they were like over the top or, and people like, I think they're really wonderful performers, and I don't actually really want to use names, but the reality of it was Madeleine was not shtick. She didn't like it. She didn't want to do it. She did, that was something that I thought she was pretty hypersensitive to. She was funny when, but she had that sense of humor, and she had that kind of look. She had that sensibility about her. She had the timing, but she was not shtick, and she didn't want to do that, and that kept her dolly honest, because I think what happens a lot of times when you go to that place, or if you go to that place, then everybody starts to one up each other, and it becomes, it sort of loses. And that, I think, was what never happened in this production of the show, was that there was no need to do that because it was honest. And I think that, Margery, probably what you're feeling or remembering is about just how honest it was.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then the audience responded, because I had done a couple dollies before it. And I'll tell you, they would cry. Real tear. I mean, they would laugh and cheer and all the rest, but you would see an audience emotionally moved because she was so honest.
I want to tell you a story that Madeleine told me one night in our many conversations, because, we were the same age. And it was very interesting because we were basically the same age. And Madeleine told me a story one night about young Frankenstein. And because this was one of the stories she said about, I need all of that because she said, for instance, in Young Frankenstein, Mel Brooks said, I want you, when Frankenstein is fucking you, I want you to sing something. And she said, well, what do you want me to sing? I don't know, Madeline, just sing something. So I went home and I laid in bed and I'm moaning and groaning. I'm pretending that I'm having sex with Frankenstein and trying to think of songs I would sing while I'm
Frankenstein. Sorry.
So I'm laying in the bed and go, oh yeah, oh yeah, Frankie, oh baby, oh thank you, oh yeah, oh sweet Miss. I came to her laying in bed, and she said, I came back to the set the next day, and she said, Mel, he said, I don't care what you sing, just sing something. And of course, she went into that, and of course, they all just fell on the floor. But that's how much
iconic.
She put all of that time and effort into every little moment like that. But she had to have a reason, and you had to give it to her. And if you didn't have it, you had to talk with her until you found it.
Well, yeah. I can't believe what I'm about to say, but we've come to the end of our show.
Oh, wow.
And this hour has flown. Margery, Leroy, Sherry, it means the world to me that you took an hour on this momentous night that we're all about to.
Yeah.
I want to tell you something. Here at the bottom, she says, "Dearest Leroy, I don't know how to get it up there.
Well, you're doing fine.
Dearest Leroy, I love you for life, Madeline. And I love her for life."
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Madeline. Happy
Birthday, Madeline.
Before we sign off, I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. If you enjoyed the show tonight, and I hope you did, please go to my website, which is richardskipper.com, and put your thoughts about the evening. That helps to boost me in other markets. I end all my shows by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list, and the second name that pops up, give that person a call tonight. Tell them what they mean to you. Don't text them. Don't email them. Call them. And again, this has been a great treat for me. I unfortunately never got a chance to meet Madeleine, but I do want to recommend this incredible book by William Madison, who couldn't be here tonight, but Leroy is in the book. He took some information from the interviews that I've done for Dolly on callondolly.com. I just want, as we sign off tonight, for you all to think of one word that epitomizes Madeleine more than any other. And, and the word that resonates most in your mind. And again, thank you all. And if you're available tomorrow afternoon at 3:00, join me again. I will be sitting down and celebrating Sarah Dash. Margery?
My word, genuine. She was genuine.
Leroy?
Oh, I can't describe her in one word. I really can't. I mean, all I'm thinking about tonight is what she said, love you for life. Love, love, love. I loved every moment in her presence. And even when I got invited to her memorial service by her husband, I was very flattered to be considered family. And she lives in my heart forever.
Sherry?
I would say magical. I just think it was a magical time for her. It was a magical time for us. She and John had come to, who ultimately became her husband. She and John were in a good place. I think she felt cared for in a way that, all the way around by the production, by what was happening in her personal life. I think she felt a sense of safe, and I think it really, it's more than a word, but I think it really set her up for the brilliance that she was able to find in Sisters Rosenzweig, and it was sad to think that, when I first heard that, that she was sick, that she had been diagnosed, and, it really, it broke my heart. That was one of those losses that just didn't make sense.
Young, so young,
and happy.
Yes,
and really happy. John married her they got married on her deathbed.
That's right.
But just one of a kind.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so are each of you. Thank you for being here tonight. I love you all.
Well, thank you for inviting us.
It's a pleasure. Bye-bye.
It was great to reminisce.
Yeah.
Hi, guys.
Good to see you guys.
Yes.
Bye, Richard. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.